Hello and welcome. My name's Valdis Keynes from Dicker Data, and we're here today with Stuart Anderson from Dell Technologies to talk about Dell EMC's PowerStore, specifically the PowerStore 500T, which we have in front of us. Stu, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Valdis. Hi everyone, Stuart Anderson from Dell. So I'm the storage specialist for the southern region for the Dell channel business, so supporting the resellers in order to be able to position and sell storage.
Excellent. Right, so the PowerStore 500T has been a huge hit in the market. We've seen great sales, great response from the market. What makes it so amazing?
Well, as far as the storage system goes, it's to provide some additional context around what PowerStore was developed to do. So essentially, the PowerStore range was released in about May last year. The purpose of that, and a lot of people were asking about why would Dell go and build a brand new storage controller when we already have a number of different various models on the shelf today, and essentially it was really there to solve a lot of the challenges that customers have around managing and operating storage. So in particular, complexities around keeping the lights on and making sure it's monitored and managed. So essentially what the PowerStore range is offering is certainly the simplicity from a platform to be able to manage it and reduce the headcount that's required to operate the product, as well as being able to adopt the latest technologies around flash, for example. So obviously that really benefits a lot in performance and lower latency, and obviously means that you can fit more applications onto the platform, as well as being able to future-proof the environment and also consolidate the footprint.
Yeah, 2RU, it's absolutely amazing. If we were to max it out, it's 1.5 petabytes on a 2RU platform, which is just bonkers.
Yeah, exactly right, because it's been developed with the latest technology of flash in mind, right? So we can leverage things like data reduction capabilities in the PowerStore platform, which means that you can do all that as the data is written to the platform. We guarantee it at 4:1. Yeah. It's hardware assisted, so essentially there's no degradation of the performance. And like I said, the consolidation is key, right? So being able to fit so much capacity into a small rack unit. And obviously from consolidation perspective, it's great. You can fit multiple workloads, be it file or block, onto the same platform, but also a huge saving in both rack space and power and cooling. Yeah,
absolutely amazing. Okay, so let's have a look at what makes the PowerStore 500T, or in fact the entire PowerStore range, unique. We'll look at the front panel first. So we've got 25 drive slots. It's all NVMe. You can fill all 25 up. We can do individual drive upgrades. You can do any size drive upgrade. Is there anything else that?
Well, you've covered all the major points. Essentially, that's the benefit of being able to leverage one drive upgrade at a time. Essentially, the fact is that we support two styles of flash drive media, so NVMe or storage class memory, which is again the next tier up.
If you've got deep pockets.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. But the benefit around this platform is you can actually mix those two drive types together, right? So you can create various flash tiers using storage class memory as that really fast metadata tier, and then the rest of the user data is sitting on the NVMe. So apart from the ability to combine those two together, so essentially the ability to combine those two types of media together is definitely a unique proposition of this platform. The ability to start with a small footprint, so the minimum is 6 drives, 1.92 terabyte drives.
Which gives you about 25 gigabytes effective capacity.
That's right, factoring in the data reduction rates on this platform. And then going forward, you can add one drive at a time as a minimum, or you can add a bulk of capacity that's required to actually meet the workload requirements. You're not limited by that drive size. So in traditional RAID arrays, you need to match the drive size and the speed, and typically matching things like RAID type and that sort of stuff, right?
And in many other platforms, you actually had to buy bundles of disks. You couldn't just do a disk at a time.
Yeah, so to give you an example, you would start with 6 and probably need to add another 6 as a minimum, whereas PowerStore really resolves that issue, so you can start with additional one drive at a time, starting from say 1.92 terabytes right up to 15 terabyte drives, and you can add one of those at a time, essentially then rebalance the workload across all those drives.
I also like the redundancy that adding extra drives. So as you were saying, we've got 6 to begin with. If you have enough capacity, if you add a 7th, it gives you basically 2 drive failure if you're not adding extra capacity on the drives. At another drive, you actually got as it dynamically reassigns the capacity?
Yeah, so it uses a form called dynamic RAID. So again, going back to my point before about solving a lot of challenges that traditional arrays had, by developing PowerStore, they were able to utilize a type of RAID that actually splits a lot of those typical SAN style redundancies and spares and all those sort of things across all the drives. So you're getting usability across all those drives. You're not wasting drives by sitting there having them dedicated as spares, for example.
Yeah, your cold spares or whatever else.
Yeah, quite costly in the instance when you're talking about flash media. So essentially what that means is you're getting the best performance and usability of those drives. If there is, in the event of a drive failure, essentially what will happen is it'll automatically rebuild. Rebuilds are very quick because, again, utilising the drives. Once that rebuild is finished, you're actually replenishing that spare capacity or that spare drive in that instance. So essentially you're protected in the event of another drive failure. But the benefit really with flash is that the failure rates are significantly lower compared to spinning drives.
And also, if there is a replacement drive required, the rebuild to the replacement drive is, you're not talking days anymore for your large spinning capacity disks.
Yeah, that's because all the drives utilise there's already capacity and usability on those drives. So it's spreading that data across all the drives. You replace the failed one, essentially then it rebalances again, and you're waiting and protected in the event of another failure. And
that rebuild time is, we're talking minutes rather than...
Well, yeah, it's flash, right? So it's extremely fast.
It does everything it needs to. We're now looking at the controller planes of the PowerStore 500T. Each PowerStore 500T comes with two controllers. The controllers on a PowerStore 500T are active-active, which gives you twice the performance as opposed to some traditional SANs which were active-passive.
That's right.
What else can we say about the control?
Well, it's fully redundant. So as we were talking about before about the drives and how there's added level of protection there, the same really goes for this chassis. So this is what we call an appliance. There's two controllers or nodes in the back. You can see each of those nodes has their own ports. So essentially there's multiple layers of redundancy, and this basically means that there's no single point of failure across the whole platform. And what also, just to your point there, is the fact that both the controllers run in active configuration, so essentially all the volumes and workloads can be spread evenly across the two systems. So again, it's better utilisation and obviously better for performance, better for consolidation. Yeah,
and you're not wasting anything, as we were saying with the drives at the front. You're not getting something in the front that you're paying for money for.
Yeah, exactly right. It's really there to give a better return on investment for these customers. They're investing a significant amount of money to go down into the tech refresh avenue as far as consolidating onto an all-flash platform, and essentially to get that best return on investment, it's better that you're using all those features and functionality.
And speaking about the return on investment, you can also get the anytime upgrade option.
That's right. So that's a unique offering that Dell hasn't actually done before in our storage platform. So it essentially means that you can pre-purchase an upgrade at the time of acquiring the storage controller. So there's two various options. So the first being that you can get a next generational upgrade. So when the new, say for example, you go and buy the 500, you elect to be part of the anytime upgrade program. Essentially means that you can then get a upgrade on the new generation hardware. So when the next platform has better CPU, more memory and so on, you can actually then tick the box and say, yes, I would like to do that because I'm a member of the program. Essentially the benefit of doing that is you can essentially pre-purchase the upgrade at a discount, so roughly 30% discount on the hardware by doing that up front. Yeah,
that's a really good saving. And the other advantage is that you can do in situ upgrades, so you don't actually have to spin down the machine either.
That's right. So the Anytime Upgrades program, and there is other vendors out there that have similar offerings, but this is the least complex as far as the amount of, I guess, caveats that you need to adhere to. So essentially, the main caveat is if you're a member of that program, you can elect to upgrade after the 180 days of the platform being installed. Anytime after that, that means you can elect to do that. You can upgrade the hardware in place, keep your data in place, and obviously do that non-disruptively. The other benefit is you don't need to pay for any additional maintenance, right? Because you may have already pre-purchased 3 years. You perform the upgrade and then essentially the maintenance continues on from that point. You don't need to prepay for more maintenance or to extend it for another year or do it at the end of the maintenance contract. So 180 days from that point on you can do it, so it's very flexible.
Yeah, another good thing with the upgrade is that if, for instance, you find that the 500T is starting to be a bit slow for your environment, you can upgrade to a higher PowerStore model, say the 1000.
That's right. So the anytime upgrade select is the higher tier of that program. It allows you to upgrade to a high performance model, so from a 500 to a 1000. Or essentially you can use that to scale out, to add another 500 into your existing cluster to give you additional scale from a performance perspective. And again, being able to do that and add that controller non-disruptively, and then use the features of PowerStore to auto-balance the workloads. And that was one of the points I was making before as far as why PowerStore is developed. And some of the customers I've spoken to in the past have large environments. It takes a lot of planning and also monitoring to actually understand what controller is running out of resources or what volume is running out of space, and where to balance that to another platform, particularly when we're talking about multiple nodes in a cluster. So essentially PowerStore has the ability to do that automatically for you as well. It's data recommendation based upon the workload profiles in this platform.
Yeah, and another good feature from the PowerStore from that front is that all of this, they're not additional licenses, it just comes with the box out of the factory.
Yeah, again, it's very simple in the fact that you obviously size it based upon the workloads in there. You buy them out of capacity. You'll have an idea of what the performances require for this platform. But from that point on, essentially, yes, it's very straightforward. All the software and features and functionality, such as encryption, snapshots, data reduction, are all included in the base cost of this platform.
Yeah, simplicity is key in this instance.
Yeah, I mean, that was another gotcha that typically, older style SAN arrays, you would need to get the base platform, and then if you wanted to feature like a snapshot, you need to pay additional license. So it just adds a lot of complexity, and particularly if you may not have bought that at the time of purchase, you then need to go back to the vendor to get them to provision that license for you, and it just adds a lot more time.
Yeah, that whole, you wanted that feature, okay, here's the cost for that one. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it makes it so much simpler.
There's no gotchas there. It's all included in the platform itself, as well as the monitoring and management tools for this platform as well.
Yeah. And anything else that you can think of on the back platform or back on the?
Well, essentially just getting back to there, the point we talked about before. You've got the two nodes inside the platform. There's expandability from a network and a fibre channel perspective. So there's the mezzanine card, which comes included with 4 25 gig ports.
And the onboard 10 gig?
That's correct. And essentially there's also onboard expandability when the NVMe expansion shells are available. So that's all included in the platform. So that'll give you enough capacity to run your front end ports for your hosts, and essentially also the other ports can be used to cluster additional controllers together. So it's all IP based to run the actual storage cluster. There's 2 IO cards that allow you to run additional, IP ports, whether it be optical or coaxial, and you can also add additional fibre channel ports, 16 or 32 gig fibre channel as well.
Yeah. But we have to make the point that if you are going down the 10 gig or 25 gig iSCSI, you will need switching. You can do direct attached fibre channel, but not iSCSI.
Yeah, so recommendation is to have an IP-based network to allow you to expand later on. So top-of-rack switches is usually a most common used approach, because it essentially means that if you add another node, you have 3 ports available in the rack, you can cable that up, and essentially the cluster is automatically expanded that way because the node is automatically detected through that process. As you mentioned before, you can do direct attached fibre channel, which means you don't need to have a front end network. Obviously you still need a management network to be able to talk to the system to be able to provision storage, but they're the 2 primary configuration options.
Yeah. And if you're going to go iSCSI 25 gig, we definitely recommend getting a pair of Dell S series, S5200 series 25 gig switches.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about before about the actual how successful the PowerStore product is, particularly the PowerStore 500, and a lot of the times we are bundling switches in with those platforms as well. They're quite costly. The actual outlay of 25 gig now is only a small percentage across the difference between say 10 gig and 25 gig.
Yeah, so it's minimal these days.
It's very common to use 25 gig now.
Yeah, so we've seen quite a lot of stuff where you buy say PowerStore 500T, a pair of S5212Fs.
That's right.
And off you go. And as you're saying, we need the management port, but any 1 gig switching will do that.
Exactly, yeah. So Very common, and it just simplifies it, right? Because IP networking is highly performant now that we're talking about 10, 25, and even 40 gig network connections. It's certainly a lot better from I guess a cost perspective compared to fibre channel. We're seeing a lot of customers move away from fibre channel into IP, and the ability to consolidate your hosts and your storage into the same network is much simpler.
Yeah. Speaking of switches, here's one we prepared earlier. It's the Dell S5212F half RU switch. You'd buy it in a pair with a dual switch rack mounting kit. Again, takes up one RU, you've got the redundancy of 2 switches, 100 gig interlinks between the 2 of them, and then the 25 gig to the PowerStore 500T. Very simple. Again, density is key in this one.
That's exactly what I was just thinking, right? Because you can fit 2 of these switches into one rack unit, and just adding that on top of the PowerStore, it's essentially the amount of consolidation getting into this architecture is significant, right? Petabyte plus worth of capacity in such a small platform, right? So
especially because we've got a lot of people hosting things in, say, NextDC or something similar.
That's right.
Where you are paying for rack space.
Yeah. And
as opposed to traditional, where you'd have to have multiple FC switches, multiple other top rack switches and SANs and everything else. 3 RU, it's nothing.
Well, you typically get 2 camps where you'll have a customer who's looking to try and extend the life of their hardware inside the data center. You might be consuming half a rack or even a full rack, and they think it's easy just to extend the maintenance. But when you really stack it up as far as a cost-saving exercise or a comparison between refreshing, so obviously there's a bit of an outlay up front, and again we can leverage things like Dell Financial Services to spread that out across as fixed periods, so they don't have the initial outlay. But when you stack it up as far as the running costs of including the maintenance renewals as well as the power and cooling and the rack space, that actually means that even by going down the exercise of refreshing their environment, they're actually saving money over the course of a 5 to 7 year period.
Yeah, and then in the future, if they do want to upgrade the maintenance renewal on the PowerStore, you're renewing it on one PowerStore and a couple switches rather than whatever the existing is.
And I guess the key thing about what PowerStore can offer in a mid-range platform is the ability to scale and add that the nodes and the performance, but essentially what that also means is for lifecycle managers as well, because you can do things like anytime upgrades, or even 5 to say 7 years down the track, you're adding additional nodes, you're getting better performance, but you can lifecycle the older ones out and do that non-disruptively. So it means from an outage perspective, your customer can continue to do that lifecycle management without ever needing to take an outage. And again, that's one of the reasons why people stopped doing that in the past, or tried to put that off as long as possible by renewing maintenance, because they didn't want to have to migrate everything off, take an outage, and it's a complex process. So this again solves those challenges as well.
Above and beyond just having excellent hardware, the software that runs on top of the PowerStore is also unique.
Well, there's 2 flavors. I'll start with that point first. So PowerStore has the ability to run in 2 operating systems. So from the 1000 and above, there's 2 flavors of the PowerStore T, which is traditional storage array like the 500, and there's the apps on appliance, which is the PowerStore X.
Yeah, that's where you can run virtual machines directly on.
Yeah, so that's definitely a unique proposition and something that no other vendors are doing at the moment. The ability to run storage services as the PowerStore operating system and VMware ESXi on the same platform.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Back to that density.
Well, that's where we've seen success with that product, is the ability to, particularly very small sites like edge case remote offices, where they may have multiple sites where they needed to consolidate, get rid of their servers and condense that into a single platform, and potentially even use the replication and the built-in technologies of the platform to migrate that to a larger data center. Being able to run those virtual machines and also do things like analytics, logistics monitoring, retail operations, customer records, that sort of stuff. So that's where PowerStore X is different. From a PowerStore T or traditional, so the 500 fits into that category, the ability to, as I mentioned before, I think that the consolidation, being able to run file and block-based workloads on the same platform. So that's where we're seeing a lot of customers really, I suppose, resonate with the platform, because they may have some Windows servers and may have some other Linux, Unix style workloads. database and things like that, be able to run that in the same platform is a key aspect. And then being able to have the scalability, as I mentioned before, and doing that non-disruptively, the ability to future-proof the environment by having flash, and you only need to start with a small amount of drives, but you can still get a massive amount of performance out of that as well. So high transactional workloads, a lot of VMs and things like that fits really well with PowerStore, and we're seeing a lot of customers using it for that.
Yeah, and the other good thing with the management software is that it's got that VMware feel that everyone's familiar with. You're not looking at something entirely foreign.
Yeah, well, there's the PowerStore operating system has a very nice and easy to use management tool, management interface, or GUI is what people like to call it as well. So very straightforward. It's all wizard driven. You don't need to be a storage guru like you used to have to be in the past, and particularly a lot of traditional SANs that I've seen used command line and scripting and things like that to actually get that provisioning happening.
Yeah, getting away from that's a very.
And what PowerStore also offers is native API integration. So say a VMware plugin, Kubernetes or Ansible plugins, to be able to drive those workflows natively through those applications. So VMware is a prime example where you can actually drive storage services through the vCenter console. You don't need to actually switch between the two. You can all do it through a single pane of glass.
Yeah, and the other thing that I find really good with the software is that every new release of software introduces an entirely new range of features. Because it's all software driven, if something is needed, the software drives what the PowerStore can do.
Yeah, so what coincided with the release of the PowerStore 500 was the latest operating systems, the version 2.0 of the PowerStore operating system. It implemented significant performance gains, so about 25% performance increase just by upgrading the operating system. Just
by software, not actually hardware. It's amazing.
It's just optimizing the code, obviously leveraging what we've done and making it simpler and better performance, and leveraging our understanding of how the platform works as well. So that was, it's basically a bonus for the customers, right? Anyone who's gone down the PowerStore path, and they can upgrade to the version 2 and immediately get a performance boost, which essentially means better return on investment. As I mentioned before, they're getting the ability to consolidate some more workloads in there, and it gives them better longevity.
And as long as they're under a maintenance contract, you don't have to pay for the upgrade, which is also a really good feature.
That's right, yeah, the software updates are free and non-disruptive. So I guess the other point is I'll just talk quickly about Cloud IQ. So that's a cloud-based monitoring tool that's included with the cost of any of the storage devices, not only from a PowerStore perspective, but a Unity range or other mid-range storage products, as well as their data protection products, server products. So it's a cloud-based tool, single pane of glass. It means that customers can have a view across all their data center. So it's much easier to understand what's going on in the environment. There's a traffic light system where it'll actually show where the issues are and make recommendations about what the remediation is. And thinking about, you talked about maintenance, and it even tells you when your maintenance contract is going to run out and things like that.
Yeah, I've seen the management platform, and that's an entire conversation in and of itself. How powerful and what that can offer.
That's right. Yeah. So that's just a snapshot.
Yeah, just a snapshot for sure.
So as far as the features, you talked about before about software. So all the enterprise grade features, snapshots, encryption, replication between sites, bi-directional replication for both file and block-based workloads, and it's all included with the base cost of this platform.
Makes it very simple, very easy to get into an all NVMe chassis.
That's what it's all about, NVMe.
And the flash is the future.
That's right.
Especially, spinning disks are maxing out at 20 terabytes now, 22?
Yeah, well, the challenge really there is, as far as, spinning drives are great for capacity, but the performances are so low on those, and the longevity, reliability, and
moving parts, right?
And the rebuild times. We talked about that before, where it's so much fast with flash, and that's one of the major challenges with larger spinning drives. You could be rebuilding for 12 to 48 hours.
Yeah, and especially because the largest ones in the PowerStore are at the 17 terabytes, which is crazy, and they're only going to get bigger. They're not going to get smaller. Right, thanks so much for your time today, Stu. It's been a pleasure having a chat about the PowerStore 500T. Thank you so much for your time. If you're interested in learning any more about the PowerStore, please feel free to reach out to dell.presales@dicadata.com.au, and we'll be more than happy to discuss all your PowerStore requirements with you. Thank you.